Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, wherever that you're coming from. So today's topic is going to be about migrating from Citrix ADC to a modern cloud-ready load balancer. Now, I'm joined by, another presenter. His name is Neptuno. He will introduce himself later. My name is Lei Yan, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at VMware. Now, Neptuno is really experienced helping a lot of our customers with the migration. That's why I invite him today to talk about the experience. But before we start this webinar, we have just a few housekeeping notes here, right? So first of all, this webinar is being recorded, and you will get a link to the on-demand viewing right after this webinar. You also have a copy of the slide deck. So if your coworker missed this webinar due to time conflicts, forward that to him if you find this content helpful, and someone who is looking at alternatives to Citrix ADC, this is a great one to forward. All right, and you can also use the Q&A to type in your questions, and I will ask those questions live and then after the presentation and demo. So without further ado, let me switch to the agenda. So today, we're going to talk about the Citrix acquisition news that a lot of you have heard. We want to provide two options from our team. So we are the NSX Advanced Load Balancer team, also known as Avi. We were acquired by VMware about 2.5 years ago. So I also want to kind of present what we hear from customers in terms of challenges and solutions. Then I'm going to switch over to Neptuno. Hey, Neptuno, he is really expert about the migration process, and we'll walk you through that. Neptuno, why don't you hop on real quick here just to give a quick introduction of yourself and your role.
Hey folks, my name is Neptuno Moretto. I am currently a program manager on the Avi field engineering team. We've been with Avi for about 3.5 years and working with the product about 4. Pleasure to meet everybody.
Cool. So he's going to go through the details and also talk about some exciting promos that we have to help you ease that migration process. And we'll always have a demo in our webinar and followed by Q&A, as I have indicated earlier. Okay, so all right. So on January 31st, we heard about the fact that Citrix was acquired by a private equity firm and is likely to merge with TIBCO Software. Now, we're not going to go into the news in details, but I think a lot of you as consumers or technologists, your question is, okay, so this is a really uncertain period. So what does that mean for me? What's going to happen to the product roadmap? What is happen to the the merger? How does it go? So there's a lot of uncertainty, and you have a lot of questions. And I think this is very reasonable, just to think about. Okay, so what should I do? Should I go this way? Should I go that way? Really the purpose of this webinar is I'm trying to tell you guys that we think there is another way, that you could take this as an opportunity to modernize your app delivery infrastructure, as well as just take a new approach to how you want to do load balancing, WAF, and container ingress, and so on. So what we're bringing to you here is a solution that has been proven in the market. So we have helped to replace over 12,000 hardware appliances out there, right? So hardware or virtual appliances that you have deployed in your data centers or maybe in some cloud environment. But what we want to bring to this table is this notion of the Switzerland of load balancer, meaning you shouldn't be worried about where you're deploying your load balancer. You should be concentrating on the applications that you're supporting. So the infrastructure or the platform itself should be agnostic to the underlying infrastructure. And the reason that a lot of our customers choose to help us to replace their old appliances is the following. First of all, we're based on a very modern, re-architected software-defined architecture, which lends itself very well to today's distributed workloads. Second of all, we support all environments. As I said, we are able to provide that consistency that you're looking forward to your multi-cloud workloads, right? Don't do siloed operations. Let's have a holistic view over all your load balancing and WAFs. Third, we are completely 100% API driven, 100% RESTful APIs enabled, so that it allows you to integrate with any ecosystem easily. And also we have built-in analytics to help you to finally see and troubleshoot and see what's going on. Last but not least, we're providing all these application services, including load balancing, WAF, and so on, from a single platform. So it's no longer siloed products that you have to deploy, different boxes that you have to, get connected and configured. So a brand new approach. So bear with me of what it looks like, right? But before we jump into the solution, let me present you the set of challenges that we see very common among hardware and virtual load balancers. We kind of group them together because to us, a virtual load balancer is just a virtual copy of the hardware load balancers. It has not been re-architected. It's the same appliances, but just in a different form factor. So I'm going to talk about the challenges. So this lends itself to all legacy load balancers out there, not just Citrix, right? So first of all, you're very familiar with this active standby load balancer pairs. That's what you deploy, right? The active maybe at best at 15% utility, and the standby is completely not utilized unless there's some, DR scenarios or failure scenarios that they have to activate. So that's the reality. And you duplicate that. You have a fleet of load balancers in your different data centers owned by different departments or business units, right? You just buy more and more of those boxes, those pairs. But what happens is you have all these capacity lying around, but when you actually have a kind of a surge or peak in your traffic, you're overloading a single load balancer pair. There is no capacity pooling that you could do, right? All you can do is let's over provision the box. There's also a very manual VIP placement process, which makes it very hard for you to take advantage of the capacity that you have available. Next, when you have all these individual load balancer pairs, you are talking about separate control points, which means you have to log in separately to make configurations, do upgrades, and then when you want to automate, it's very hard. So this is the kind of the pain points we hear over and over again from the customers. Now, yes, some of these products do provide a dashboard where you can see and maybe do some basic operations. However, we argue that maybe that's not truly controlling all your load balancers from a single point in terms of end-to-end lifecycle management, which we'll go into a little bit more detail later. Last but not least, it's these hardware boxes makes it very hard to have visibility into them. So if there's a problem, you got a 4 a.m. troubleshooting call, you have to go through logs, you have to go logging through individual systems, yet you cannot pinpoint exactly, is this application problem or is that networking problem, right? So a lot of us got blamed for issues. Maybe it's not our issue, but we can't tell. We can't troubleshoot quickly. So that's another challenge from an operation perspective. Last but not least, the platform itself, it has been designed decades ago, and it works perfectly, right, in on-prem monolithic applications. It's fine. However, a lot of us knows that we're moving to the cloud and multi-cloud, and we're also moving our workloads into containers, and they're going into production, right, not just in the test lab anymore. So in this world, how can we future-proof our application delivery platform? It has become a major challenge. So what we have summarized is we felt like the control plane and data plane has been tightly coupled in an appliance form factor. And what we want to try to solve is, what if we could separate that and have a centralized control plane and a distributed data plane to be more agile, to be more simple to operate, and eventually be cost effective, right? So here are the two options that we can provide you to consider when you're looking at your Citrix ADC in your, whether it's in your data centers or in a multi-cloud environment, because these are the type of workloads you need to support moving forward. Option one, we call it a standalone load balancing replacement. So you can replace your Citrix ADC with Avi, which is also known as NSX Advanced Load Balancer here, which provides this whole suite of application services from local to global load balancing, WAF, ingress, and so on. The other option is if you have a VDI virtual desktop workloads deployed with Citrix, you can also replace that together with VM Horizon plus Avi. So we're fully integrated VDI and LV solutions in one, which I'll go into a little bit details in later. So these are the two options. Hopefully that's clear. So let's first focus on the option one, which is a standalone load balancing replacement, meaning you can apply it to all use cases. So doesn't matter where your workloads are, whether they're VMware workloads or they're non-VMware workloads, right? And whether you are in Kubernetes, OpenShift, or you are on VMware Tanzu for your Kubernetes workload, we are able to deliver the same set of application services for any cloud and any applications from one platform. So that's the thing I want to kind of emphasize here. So it is truly enterprise-grade applications. We have a lot of large customers in our customer base, and they have a lot of feature requirements. So this is a full-on whole stack replacement for your existing ADC solutions. So let me kind of drive into the architecture, which I have been talking about. This is something we have completely re-architected that works really well to distributed workloads you have. So first of all, we separated out the control plane from the data plane. So we call it Avi controller or the Avi service engines here. And the controller can be self-managed, or it can be available in a SaaS fashion as well. Now, the benefit of separating the control plane and data plane is now you can really deploy your load balancers or these service engines anywhere you want, whether it's on-prem or public cloud. But whether it is running on bare metal, VMs, or containers, all you need to do is to deploy these little service engines right next to them, right next to your workloads, instead of having to put individual appliances in these different environments and figure out how to manage them, right? So it really allows a central orchestration in terms of the life cycle of these service engines. So you can spin up, you can spin down, you can scale out, and you scale back. And that provides that full elasticity, that kind of cloud-like experience within your own premises, whether it's on-prem or the public cloud that you have. So the elasticity is a key thing to accommodate the peak workloads, so you don't have to over-provision like what you have to do with appliances sometimes. The other thing is the resilience. So we do know that things fail, right? But it's okay if you have one service engine that goes down, we quickly spin up another one because these are small. Remember, these are small, either small virtual machines or containers that you're running. So it's much easier to replace than the physical appliances. So resilience. Automation. So as I mentioned, we're 100% RESTful APIs enabled. Even within our system ourselves, the controller has to call or access the service engines via an API calls. So then that's the same thing with any other ecosystem we have. A lot of customers integrate to the Avi controller to different environments, as well as to different management. For example, you can integrate into Splunk, you can integrate into VRA, VRO, and you can also use other tools like Ansible, Terraform to automate your workflows. Last but not least, because our load balancers is deployed right between your end users and applications, it's a prime location that we see all the transaction going through us, right? So why drop those rich analytics? So we take those analytics, have them feed into our controller to make some decisions. Also, one last thing that we recently launched end of last year was the Avi Pulse service. So these are the kind of SaaS call services that we have launched that talks directly to the controller, which gives you threat intelligence, which give you proactive support, and we're looking to provide some central licensing management moving forward as well. So this is kind of a nutshell of this architecture, and that is really the basis of all the claims that we have: multi-cloud, elasticity, automation. It's all based on this architecture. All right. And then you don't have to believe me to in terms of the benefits that our customers are seeing. IDC has conducted a business value study to prove that when customer move from legacy hardware load balancers to Avi, they've enjoyed a lot of benefits, like 97% faster provisioning because they can spin up a virtual service so quickly, and they have less time because they have visibility, so have 41% less time spent on troubleshooting. So this is key for business. We also have, depending on the use cases, we're helping our customer to save on their TCO, especially their operating expenses. And elasticity is something that we really proud of. We're able to, scale out very quickly in matter of minutes in the public cloud into 1 million SSL transaction per second. So things like that, we have proof points that you can take a look. But listen to our customers. Proximus is a telco business in Europe, and they have one thing that they really like about us is the speed, the automation, the self-service capability that enable them to provide to their customers, and also allow us to actually integrate with the OpenStack infrastructure they have. They're very happy that you're able to spin up a new load balancers in about 15 to 30 minutes. We actually have cases for our customer who are able to spin up load balancer even faster. So the change from a per box configuration, which is required for appliance-based LBs, to a really central orchestration from the Avi controller. So it makes everything simple for our customer. Now, option 2, as I mentioned, if you have Citrix Zen Desktop and ADC deployed environment, we have a solution for you. So we are integrated with VMware Horizon for the VDI use cases. So as you can see, we're deployed in front of the UAG servers and connection servers. We also can provide GSLB service by putting Avi GSLB in front of the different environments, so you can balance a load balance between an on-prem environment and a cloud environment, right? Neptune, do you have something that you want to add here? I know you're very familiar with all these deployments.
So in regards to the Horizons integration, it's very easy to do on Avi. We do have a full documented process. We also do provide assistance via our various programs that we're going to go ahead and talk about in just a few moments. But here we can see that GSLB is set in front, forefronting any external communications from client devices, PCs, laptops, mobile devices, coming in to the GSLB, accessing the FQDN for that virtual service and being routed over accordingly by the DNSVS to either the on-premise deployment or in conjunction to the Azure Cloud setup that we see here. In this scenario, we have a service engine forefronting the UAG. So your client request will come into the UAG and be passed on to the connection server. And then at which point in time, we'll open up a separate connection, once we validated you, we will go ahead and provide you enumerating the on-premise applications, whether it be RDS, anything else in that fashion, command lines, and then also any of the published applications as well. So offering both a full feature of published applications and VDI as well.
So really a single platform that you can deploy across multi-site as well as multi-cloud, right? So we also Horizon Cloud on Azure, for example. So for us, the underlying infrastructure really doesn't matter. We're the Switzerland of load balancer. Now, this is a quick summary. It's very much in the same lines, right? It's fast to deploy, it's easy troubleshooting, and helps you reduce the cost. So do come and take a look at this complete VDI solutions that VMware has to offer. And then this is, one of the perfect use case that VMware IT at the time had to onboard Carbon Black after VMware has acquired them. Onboarding all these virtual desktops in a matter of weeks. it's a tall order, but which they did it. They did it in the shortest time in the history of the company. So we have public case studies written about this, how VMware IT leverages our technology right away and deploying the Horizon deployment on VMC on AWS. So really good stories there. I would highly encourage people to take a look. All right, so now let me switch over to Neptuno, right? This is what you guys are here for, to hear about our migration process and then the promos that we have available for you. So Neptuno, why don't you take it?
Sure thing. Can you pass over presenter to me?
Yes, I'm going to do that. Just give me a second. There we go. Yeah, and then Neptuno is actually at the end. I'm going to give a short Avi demo as well.
Sure. Hey folks, so today we'll be talking about the migration process and current promotions that we have and are offering to customers to aid in their transition over to Avi. So before taking on a migration task, it can be very daunting. We do recommend that you go ahead and leverage our education options enablement courses. And what you're seeing here is navigating over to avinetworks.com/education. We have a number of offerings towards the bottom of the screen here. And this will really give you an understanding from the base level to a more advanced course of the architecture, the inner workings, the objects, policies, things of that nature. And then also in conjunction, you're going to get a lot of real world use examples from the various members that deliver these types of courses across our education team. So right here, we can see that there is a 101 workshop and hands-on. This is our introductory course. Very good for folks to go ahead and get started with this. It gives you a product overview. It'll go ahead and provide a hands-on lab, and this is all done within a 90-minute time frame. So it's not too long of a course. Again, introductory. We move on to the architecture workshop. Now, the architecture workshop provides more of a deep dive into the inner workings of our product. It'll also go ahead and walk you through the implementation and architecting of a modern load balancing solution within your environment. And then on top of it, if for whatever reason you are not able to go ahead and attend either of these courses, keep in mind that the architecture workshop is split over 4 days. It's 4 half days. It's a little bit difficult sometimes for folks to go ahead and get away for that long. We went ahead and actually provided the on-demand videos. On-demand videos covering our operations are delivered by the field engineering team, and they go through a wide gamut of architecture, design, implementation, troubleshooting, virtual service manipulation, lots and lots of things. Within that side as well, we'll move over to the next slide now. Once you select the operations videos, you can also feel free to register for our next live operations workshop. This is also delivered by the Avi Field Engineering team, co-delivered usually by 2 different solution architects. We have one in EMEA and also in the Americas region. You will see our upcoming dates being broadcasted right here. And feel free to go ahead and sign up. The form is publicly available. Anyone can sign up. There are no prerequisites for any of the courses which I've referenced here across any of the enablement. Moving on. Our first offering that we're going to look at is the 90-day free trial. Now, this is also known as the Customer Acceleration Program, or CAP for short, as we reference it internally. So acceptance into the program is by invitation only. So you'll definitely want to go ahead and speak to your VMware rep to get the process started if interested. Once accepted into the program, we go ahead and provide 3 months of full trial licenses up to 20 service cores. Now, these are enterprise licenses which offer full features like Lei had gone ahead and described, GSLB, WAF, and all the functionality already included with Avi. We also offer the free Avi Intro Operations Workshop, 2-day personalized installation and onboarding workshop with a dedicated solution architect to your engagement. And this is supported by load balancing experts from the Avi Field Engineering team, PM, and also Solutions Engineering. So there's a wide view on this program, and it's designed more of a rapid deployment and enablement. So it's got a wide view. Lots of folks want to go ahead and help out and step in as needed. It's a really big team effort, and it's been very successful across our customer base. What we go ahead and handle in these types of engagements is a lot of focus is given onto the actual design and planning. We go through various stages, which you'll go ahead and see here on the next slide. Now, the durations that you see here are all approximates. The program intake is where we first start off with. one of our PMs will go ahead and reach out to you, set the understanding and expectations of how the program entails and the process that it'll go through. We'll start looking at timelines. We'll start outlining a high-level success criteria. Keep in mind, these are subject to change as we move through the program, and we notice that we need different business needs come up. We need to modify it, and that's completely fine. The technical intake is when you'll begin with your solution architect who's dedicated to your engagement. This portion right here will be led by the solution architect, and here is where we start to discuss the ecosystem integration, the use case overview, and then the initial design discussions. Now, design may take a few meetings, so we're happy to go ahead and continue scheduling them as different stakeholders come into the fold and add their feedback to what they envision the design overall to be with Avi, their infrastructure. The takeaways from this are going to be the prerequisites are going to be identified, and we also have a technical checklist. The technical checklist is exactly that. It's a checklist with all of the parameters that would make this engagement flow smoothly. So we're going to want to identify port groups, subnets, static IPs, the environments, service accounts, etc. And we will go through that with you. It'll be provided in advance, so you can go ahead and fill it out as quickly as possible. But with our help, we'll go ahead and complete it as well when we go through the technical intake process. Moving on, we'll go into the automated installation and configuration. Now, we always aim to do a hands-off approach, automated deployment using Ansible of a 3-node cluster with Avi. Now, that includes not just the standing up and deploying of the OVAs, it includes the clustering, cloud configuration, DNS, NTP, basically the initial setup of your Avi cluster ready to go to the point where we can go ahead and start either building out virtual services or start looking at administrative features such as UI access, RBAC, things of that nature. And this will be best left to the direction of your solution architect, as each use case is going to be very different. And lastly, we're going to go ahead and head over to the sign off and closure. Here is where we like to go ahead and really focus on the enablement side. We're going to go ahead and do a UI walkthrough, an analytics walkthrough. And while we're talking about analytics, that's one of the biggest things that Avi brings to the table. It's end-to-end timing. We're going to look at that in the demo today too, briefly. But that's one of the biggest things, alleviating the potential scenario that Lei was speaking of, where we can't determine where the possible slowdown could be, a bottleneck. So we're doing a lot of finger pointing. Avi really helps out with that because you can see the end-to-end timing between VIP, service engine, and backend pool member. It's very useful, especially coming from troubleshooting a hardware load balancer. And lastly, we do provide a sole deliverable, an engagement overview document, and that is developed by the solution architect and will encompass all of the configurations, best practices, anything that we may have touched throughout the engagement will be provided to you in a summary so that you have it for your records as well. And we'll look at an informal sign-off of the engagement. Keep in mind that throughout the 3-month duration of this engagement, you will have full support by your solution architect. We will be using the standard channels such as email and or Zoom. Some things are just faster if we just get on a Zoom and knock it out. But rest assured that you will have folks there to go ahead and assist you with questions, any new configurations, or a new feature that may have come out that you would like to also go ahead and test in your POC. Moving on to our next current promotion, we have a zero-cost migration promo. Now, this promotion is led by our professional services team here at VMware, and it really offers an end-to-end solution for encompassing design, deploy, config, and the migration of objects from a legacy ADC over to Avi. The idea behind this is that we're looking to go ahead and to do anywhere from 15 to 120 service units. The migration works with, we will move over 15 VIPs per each service unit. We do this in an automated fashion. The reason why we approach it from an automated fashion is it removes a lot of the syntactical error. We have a migrations tool which is currently available in Avi Tools, located on our GitHub repository, which we'll share the link in here as well too. It's publicly accessible and offers some other additional tools. But the automated approach is the standard method in which we go by. And then if any manual interjection is needed for, let's say, converting of any policies, traffic manipulation rules, your dedicated engineer will go ahead and start working with you on that. There is a lot of functionality that when we get into these types of migrations, we find that Avi can do natively versus being set up via policy on the legacy ADC. Logging is one of the big things that we continuously see. Lots of policies for logging where Avi can handle this natively via one of its app analytics profiles.
Just one thing to chime in here, Neptuno, is as you mentioned, we have the migration tools freely available to anyone who wants to download and take a look, and then move their configuration over. So that's one thing I want to. It's not like PSO engagement is not required, but if you
Mhm.
do have more complex deployment scenarios, or you want to say explore, accommodate say a multi-cloud workloads, right? Those become much more complicated, and this
Absolutely.
program is for you to get started with our PSL team, and maybe you can learn all the best practices you need from this engagement, right? And you can do most of the things yourself. But we do want to let you know that we won't say enterprise workloads is simple, right? So a lot of our teams are very experienced, and then this program is extended to Citrix ADC, from other migration engagement such as F5. So you can rest assured that the teams have gone through a lot of accounts, a lot of different deployment scenarios. That's why Neptuno is able to give you that systematic walkthrough on what the process looks like. So that's just something I want to point it out, and I will make
Absolutely.
sure that we post that link in the chat, the GitHub link. Okay. Right. Cool.
Absolutely. As I previously mentioned, the migration promo is an end-to-end offering for a limited time. Here we can go ahead and see the day 0 and 1 tasks that the professional services team would entail and encompass, and then moving on to day 2 with the health check, leaving the migration for last. We want to rest assured that the infra that we go ahead and set up and deploy is meeting all the needs, is correctly deployed, sized correctly. Sizing is very critical to what we do, and keep in mind that your service engines are the true load balancers. So Lei went ahead and described how our architecture works with a controller and a service engine, the separation of management and data planes. Our service engines are the true load balancers, and that's where we really have the guys come in and help you with the sizing of those service engines to encompass the traffic load that your legacy ADC has. And to do that, we do request metrics such as transactions per second, key size. All of this is used to really help us tailor the offering to fit your business needs. What we're going to do here is we're going to walk through the migration process. I have a couple of bullet points outlining each step of the way, and you'll see the life cycle transition from the program governance phase, migration, to the go lives. So beginning with the program governance phase for project planning and scheduling. Here's where our team's going to go ahead and schedule the kickoff meeting with all the project stakeholders. We're going to move into the project plan proposal. That's going to need to be developed, scrutinized, and then proposed. With all goes well, that's accepted, and we'll move into the infrastructure readiness assessment. That is also a vital role to make sure that where we'll be deploying, or your source and destination, are in a good state to go ahead and undergo a migration. Moving on, we'll look at the automated config conversion. Now, this is where the migration tool really shines. We are able to leverage that tool to go into the legacy ADC and pull an existing configuration and convert it to a readable format for import into Avi. That really maintains the accuracy of the objects which are to be imported. And then we also move into the manual review. As I mentioned, policies, anything customized, health monitors, things of that nature will be reviewed thoroughly by the team to ensure that we can meet that business need either with a native functionality or by inclusion of additional feature or configuration. So here, what we'll see is we'll select the apps for migration, which are going to be migrated. So while we're on that topic, there are some prerequisites here where we do want to think about, is there going to be a cleanup of virtual services prior to selecting these applications? Are we going to have a configuration freeze prior to selecting these applications so that when the time comes to actually move them over, we're not missing a bulk of objects? So there's some things to consider during that process right there, but ultimately we will select the objects will be moved over. The existing load balancing configuration will be reviewed once again, just to make sure everything is in good standing order and we can transition all objects successfully. And then the config conversion strategy will be identified and performed via automation, like we talked about via the migration tool. Moving on to the next step, we'll look at the customization. Now here is where I alluded to in where if any additional features, any policies, if we need to translate or convert any traffic manipulation rules, here's where we'll want to go ahead and do it. If you're utilizing a data script, and we can go ahead and facilitate that via native policy, HTTP, either response, we can, and we will look into it, and we'll make the best recommendation for the use case. or look into translating it one-to-one so that Avi can go ahead and understand and produce that same functionality. The additional or customized configuration would then be imported as well in a very similar fashion, utilizing the tool. We would then move over to the validation and functional testing. Now, once the objects have been imported into Avi, we still want to verify them. We want to make sure that everything ended up in the right spot, naming conventions, IPs, anything of that nature configurations. Also, we do want to be safe. We want to identify cutover and rollback strategies should there be any need to do so. With regards to that, the typical approach that we do take is a scaled operation versus all in one shot. It allows for a more stable migration process in doing large chunks at a time. It is what we tend to lean to versus doing it all in one shot. Either way can be done, but that's our recommended approach. We'll also verify your health monitor operations. Those are vital to keeping your virtual services in up status. Anything that's been customized, we'll gladly assist with bringing it over to Avi as well. And then we'll do some application functional testing. Once it's been imported into Avi, we'll launch a couple of them and test against them to make sure that they are responding, metrics are flowing, and are visible within the UI. Lastly, we'll go to the Go Live section right here. And in the Go Live, the application cutover would be scheduled and performed at a specified time, which would minimize the impact to the business. Sometimes these migrations can be large operations depending on the number of objects existing on your prior ADC. So these can take time. Again, that phased approach really helps with this. We can even schedule that out weeks on end at a time. It doesn't all have to be done back to back to back unless that's needed. And it is going to be discussed very thoroughly with the customer in the planning phase. And then we'll go ahead and do some user application testing, and then we'll get a sign off from the application owners, identifying that everything's okay with their app now being load balanced behind Avi, that they're not seeing any quirks or any odd issues, or if any adjustment is needed, let's say additional headers, policies, things like that. And then at which point in time, we'll go ahead and get the okay. The system will go ahead and be released to production use case amongst all users.
Yeah, and a quick chime in here is I heard a lot our customer like our per app load balancing. It helps in the migration process as well because you can decide, say, I'm going to move this portion of applications onto Avi first, while
Correct.
still, no disruption to your existing applications businesses at all, and slowly do the migration, right? Just want to highlight the fact that you can do the per app load balancing, right? We don't just need to require you to turn off the appliance and then move everything over.
Right.
So that's very disruptive. So we can move it gradually per applications based on your or per whatever data center, right? The gradual way. Just
Absolutely, it's a really good point, Lei. Yep, DNS cutovers are typically what we're going to be looking at. So you can stand up a migration. So one other thing too, while we're on this topic, we can run multiple migrations at any given time. So if you have NetScaler pairs, the tool can run independently across other boxes and start working on those configurations on its own, while the team starts working on the standing up of the actual infrastructure. So we have two work streams actually in parallel moving along to, again, work towards reducing that admin overhead, time to completion, and cost. You're absolutely right. DNS cutovers are going to be one of the more preferred ways that we like to do things. So we'll stand everything up onto Avi that's been migrated in a disabled status. The virtual service will be active, but it'll be disabled from taking traffic. And at which point in time, the DNS cutover could go ahead and assist to that, and we'll flip everything on. That's a great point, though. So moving on, we can see here that there are benefits to having a guided migration or a migration service. It's a seamless move to the next generation application delivery platform. We talked about the tools that are utilized for this, automation being the key, removing of syntactical errors, reducing cost, and it really simplifies that conversion process. It is quite tedious if you need to do it manually. A significant reduction in time and cost savings. And then we do have our experts in our team has done this multiple times, utilizing the tool and also the manual method that we just discussed. So they do have a wealth of expertise in real world scenarios across dev, staging, and production type deployments, encompassing thousands of objects, virtual services, VIPs, and pools. So they are well adept at these enterprise grade deployments that are already existing, which are looking to move over to Avi. It's going to lower the business risk, again, really contributing to a lot of that admin overhead and getting folks enabled on performing migrations at some point on their own as well, because it is part of an enablement process as we go through it all. So we had talked about a little bit of a demo here. So one of the first things that we wanted to look at was the analytics for Avi. Right, so let's take a quick look at that. Let me bring that up here. Alrighty, you all should be able to see my screen.
Yep.
Great. So what we'll be taking a look at a 21.1.3 controller, which is one of our latest out right now. This does have a patch currently installed in it, and this is one of our lab environments utilized by our solution architects on the field engineering team. This is used on a regular basis to perform system hardening, application testing, scale out operations, self-healing, a lot of the features and functionality of Avi that Lei had covered initially in her slides. What we'll be looking at today is, here's a UAG. So UAG, a virtual service. When you click on the virtual service name, you'll land on the analytics screen. Now, the analytics screen will go ahead and give you an average on the values of the end-to-end timings. So we can see the end-to-end timing up here. We also have a graph right here, which goes into very detail about the client round trip, server, app response, data transfer, and the total. We can also go ahead and modify those timing values to include past year, quarter, or month. This is very beneficial in regards to what potentially could be displayed. Items such as, let's see right here, we can see that there was a little bit higher throughput than normal, but also we see that there was a config event based off of this icon right here. So if we were to click this icon, it'll go ahead and open it up towards the bottom, and we can see that there was a virtual service config update. You'll see a side-by-side screen depicting what was enabled and what was disabled, or vice versa. In this case, what was enabled, we moved real-time metrics from false to true. And we set a duration of 0 for unlimited. And this is for testing purposes. We're going to be doing some tests with this virtual service at a later time today. So we do want the active logging. We do recommend that you leave real-time metrics, client insights, anything of that nature, which will contribute to additional computing on the service engine to capture all of these logs, enabled for troubleshooting purposes, or if you're working with support. Now, moving on from this screen right here, this is a great screen though, just to give you a good idea of what's happening with this virtual service over a span of time. If we want to get a little bit more granular into it, we can start looking at the logs. Now, here you can see that I'm only displaying significant logs, and I'm displaying them for the past 6 hours. So I can see here that at 6:43 a.m., I have a .238 client IP coming in. Now, if we walk through the logs, we can see the client IP here, the source port, the location is internal, the SSL version. And then if we move on, we'll see the VIP that they went ahead and reached, which is .168. You can see that's also 168, and also its port. And then here, where the server connection IP is showing not applicable. What should be shown here is the service engine's data NIC and its IP. It's going to have its own IP. So right here, this indicates to me that the client went ahead and made a request to the VIP, but unfortunately, that request didn't traverse any further. It stopped right here. In fact, it never made it back over to the pool member, which would have been displayed right here in this field server IP. And it's going to display the pool member's IP, not just the pool object encompassing a multitude of servers. You will get the exact IP and its corresponding port that it was used. You will see the round trip times up here. And this is where I was alluding to in that scenario with Lei. If you have an application problem, one scenario that we see often is 503 errors. If we were to get a 503 error, immediately that comes back as there's something at the load balancer. Avi may even tell you that you're getting a 503. Leveraging the virtual service logs will give us a lot more insight. Right off the bat, the extensive logging, we can go ahead and see if the request even made it to the back end. If we were to see a back end IP here, we would want to dig into a little bit further, at which point we might need to go ahead and do a traffic capture and see if that 503 is being passed over from the back end, as the request would have made it, over to Avi, and potentially why. Do we need any additional configurations? Anything else need to be added in the header? We'd have to take a look. Significant logs can also be tailored. If we're seeing a multitude of significant logs, such as NTLM for some of the legacy apps, and they're producing 401s, but it's just a legacy app, unfortunately still resulting in those types of events, we can go ahead and tailor an analytics profile to go ahead and exclude certain response codes as well, not to cloud up your apps and then create false positives for any administrator. If we switch over to the non-significant logs, we can see a multitude of response codes here. This was from earlier today, and we can see here that UAG access was requested by client 146. They came and hit the VIP, and then they went out the service engine data NIC IP. Keep in mind that SNAT is enabled by default with Avi, so when you're looking at between the SC and the backend pool member, you will see the service engine's data NIC IP being passed over to the pool member. And right here, you can see the pool name, but you can also see the actual pool server and 443, which is the port that was reached. Let me see if I can expand this. One other great feature, and we use this quite often too in troubleshooting, is the ability to enable logging of all headers that are inbound and also the response. So here we can see the X forwarded for, and that's for folks that want to retain client IP or have an application that needs it. We have other ways of doing it, but if you can digest the X forwarded for, this is one great way of doing it, enabled by default in our app profiles as well. We can also see the JSession cookies, and then if we move on, we'll be able to also see the response headers, keep alives, things of that nature. This is all extremely beneficial for any administrators in reducing the amount of time needed to troubleshoot and identify where a potential networking issue could be, especially under the crunch time if it's an outage. Apart from that, we can go ahead and also look at larger scale analytics. So for right now, we want to get an idea of which IP has been utilizing this VIP the most. Well, this client right here, 238, seems to be utilizing 73%, making a lot of calls, 332 entries. There are numerous things that we can go ahead and see via VIP addresses. And then if we get into something a little bit more granular, we can also see the response codes as well. Response codes telling you if this virtual service has experienced quite a number of issues and so forth. Does it need more investigation? You also have the ability to become more granular here in the logging. So if I just want to look at 628 to 644, we can do that. And then if I need to, I can zoom to the selected via the table and export to Excel if need be, either the current page or all 227 logs, in case I'm working with support or need to provide this to any internal engineering resource. From here, we'll also see a health score, which is a cumulative average of the virtual service. So keep in mind that when you stand up a virtual service, you may see a low health score. Give it some time as that average builds up, and you will see that health score continue to rise. After a few hours, we'll want to look at it again. If there's any negative impacts to that, we're going to look at them right now and see how we can identify those as well. But for the most part, the logs are the bread and butter of the Avi load balancer, even giving you the ability to switch between L7 and L4. So if we go ahead, Leigh.
Yeah, so we have actually quite a lot of questions coming in.
Okay.
If you don't mind, if you can just switch back to just the last slide, I do want to just leave it on the screen. People can take a look at ways to engage with us as in terms of next steps, right? So there are various ways. There are hands-on lab, the workshop that you could sign up for. Just want to make sure you have those. Neptuno, if you don't mind, just clicking back to that slide.
Sure.
Yeah, and then let me get to, so next one. Yep, so this is the slide. Okay, so let's get to the Q&A. The first question, let me go through quite a lot of questions. Okay, let me knock some really easy ones out. First one is from ABG. He's asking, do you require NSX to run? The answer is no. So as I said, we're truly multi-cloud load balancing. And we run on both VMware workloads and non-VMware workloads. It could be on-prem, it could be public cloud. So even our product name says NSX in front, it doesn't mean that we require NSX to run. Second question is WAF or GSL be included or as an add-on? It's included. So it's one single platform that provides both, load balancing, container ingress, analytics, WAF, GSLB. So you don't have to pay additional. So there's no additional SKUs. Yes, you do need to properly size your deployment and to accommodate the WAF. When you turn on a WAF, it's always much more computational heavy. So that's a point to take into consideration. Another one is from Jonawith is, do you have, how long does your migration typically take? That's a great question. Hey, Neptuno.
So migration, typically a smaller migration. So right now we are working on about 150 virtual services for one of our newer customers. This migration will take approximately 1 week to go ahead and complete, and that walks us through the design and planning phase where really a lot of that work comes into play. We want to make sure that everything is good to go. Any of the conversions needed for the traffic manipulation, or in a case of an F5 iRule conversion, that's where we really scrutinize it and add more time, because we want to ensure that we can either do it natively or that we can go ahead and develop a data script or policy configuration that will work best to meet that feature set that you had. So we're looking at about 8 minutes per virtual service is about the going rate right now.
Nice, cool. Is that accurate? Wow. Another question is related to migration. I think it's a great one. It's from Rahu. I have a pretty small team. Can I migrate in a phased approach? Can you discuss the best practice? I think you did allude to, but maybe let's talk a little bit about customers who have a small team that's tasked with migration. How can we help them, and what are the tips and tricks they can share with them?
Yep, absolutely. Again, going back, planning is everything. The migration is predominantly planning versus actually executing the migration function itself. With small teams, we absolutely accommodate to their business needs and their time frames. So if they're under the crunch, we will schedule subsequent calls, but we really do like to take that phased approach with the DNS cutover to minimize any potential negative impacts. This also allows the project manager, which is assigned via that migration promo, so you'll get assistance from them as well to help bring in all the application owners, keep communication going. This allows a smaller subset, more intimate communication back and forth on the testing, any changes that need to be done, any oddities they may be seeing before moving on to the next subset of applications which are to be migrated over, and working with a potential new set of application owners altogether. So the phased approach is still the way we like to go ahead and work, and it is something that we will accommodate on a per business.
Yeah, nice. Neptuno, if you don't mind, just flip it back to the previous slide on how to engage, because I do think people are looking for resources where they could access more information. So, and then in the meantime, there's one person asking about the migration link. Neptuno, if you don't mind posting it into the chat so everybody can
Sure,
see it. Yeah.
will do.
So let me kind of walk through here. So we have lots of information on our website, and you can access the KB articles or AVI documentation just from the docs page, and you can get access to more of those on-demand webinars through webinar page, upcoming as well as on-demand. Also, Neptuno's team have created this cool encyclopedia for AVI. So, if you want to have some bedtime reading, that's the best one, right? And then the next step, so that's the learning things, right? Anything, whether you're ready to embark on a migration or you're simply looking for, a new load balancer to deploy, right, for your new workloads, whether containers, public cloud, or replace your on-prem load balancers. Let's learn first. I get it. So that's why we provide all these information available for you. The second is try. So get your hands dirty. So we highly recommend you to jump on the VMware has hands-on lab HOLs, and we have, I believe, 5 or 6 of them that cover, from the beginning, getting started, to all the way to say how to configure Kubernetes, right, in your environment, and WAF and GSLB and so on. So do take advantage. That's just kind of more like a sandbox environment where you can take your time and have a guided experience of the platform. But if you really want to have true kind of one-on-one type of close contact with our product, I highly recommend you to join the workshops, whether it's the 90-minute intro workshop, which you do get to do a 60-minute lab in it, right? And then, or you join the 4 half-day workshops, or watch these operations videos that will help you prepare for the different aspects of migration, or even just learning about our architecture a little bit more. So this is something that I would highly recommend for you to check out. Anything else, Neptuno, that you want to highlight? And I'm not sure if you did posted the GitHub link for all Avi tools. That's there.
Yep.
So I want people to have access to that, right? Yeah.
Yep, the field engineering team is currently very busy with tool development, and we continuously are working on these operations videos. We are now looking at education in regards to Kubernetes, and in parallel, we have folks also working on Easy Deploy. Now, Easy Deploy is a Fling tool app which will assist you in deploying Avi in an automated fashion with a very simplistic UI dropdown. So there's a couple of ways to deploy Avi: the manual method. We can leverage scripts which are available in our GitHub repository. I can provide that link too as well if anybody's interested in Python examples. And then also Easy Deploy can be found on the Fling page, and I'll add that to this presentation as well. Very good tool. Take a look at it. It's gotten some great feedback from in LinkedIn as well, a couple of blog posts, and it does help tremendously with deploying Avi in vCenter, AWS, integration with Horizons. There are more things on the roadmap as well as the developers continue bringing in features.
Yeah, so we aim to help our customers simplify the day zero operation.
Absolutely.
The deployment. Okay. Another question. I think the person who asked about the phased approach, I do want to say that we understand not all your load balancer, refresh contract all show up at one time, right? You have different boxes that's due for a refresh, and I think the phased approach for migration is perfect for that scenario. But anyway, I will really thank you, Neptuno, for your presentation and demo and walk us through the migration process. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and definitely take advantage of the 2 promos that Neptuno is talking. Call your VMware rep, say, hey, where's the trial promo? How about the PSO migration promo? And then we will get you started. All right. Thank you so much one more time, and thank you for your time, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you all. You have a great day.